It was a quiet afternoon in Winterfell. The wind had calmed, and the snow fell soft like whispers from the old gods. Bran Stark, only 8, but already eager to see the world from above, stood at the edge of the broken tower, peering out toward the woods. His little fingers clutched the stone ledge, not for fear, but for balance. He had always loved to climb, not for the thrill, but for the silence it gave him. Up there, no one asked him to be a lord or a good boy. He could just be Bran. He looked up, about to scale higher, when a strange flutter stirred in his chest. And not fear, not instinct, something else. A voice, a woman's voice, sweet and sharp like the wind slicing through the trees. "Not yet, boy. Not this way." He blinked, confused. Then he heard footsteps. 2 of them, lighter than a soldier's, faster than a servant's. He ducked low, crouched behind a stone edge, and stayed still. What he saw next was not meant for any child's eyes. Cersei Lannister and her brother Jaime. But unlike in the timeline we remember, Bran never slipped, never fell, never made a sound. He watched, eyes wide, heart hammering, as their lips met, not once but many times, tangled in something far beyond affection. His young mind didn't fully understand it, but he knew it was wrong. He knew this was a secret they would kill, to keep. So he waited, and when they left, he climbed down. Slowly, silently, his little fingers trembling more from shock than effort. He didn't speak a word of it. Not that night, not the next. But the Bran who walked back into the great hall that evening was not the same boy who had climbed up that tower. At first, he told no one. How could he? Who would believe him? Even in a family as strong as the Starks, there were things a child's word could not change. So he watched, and he waited. Then he told Arya, not Robb, not Jon, Arya. He whispered it to her beneath the heart tree, with the snow dusting her face and their breath steaming like dragon smoke. "I saw the queen and her brother. They were together, not like family." Arya didn't flinch, didn't laugh. She just looked at him, wide-eyed, and said one word, "Tell father." But Bran shook his head. "They'll kill me." And so it began. Bran, no longer broken in body, began to bend in other ways. He watched with eyes too sharp for a child. He listened where he shouldn't. And what grew inside him was not fear, it was power. Power through knowledge, the kind of power that could crack kingdoms. And far beyond the wall, the three-eyed raven stirred in his roots, confused. The boy did not fall. The ripple had begun. The days grew colder, though winter was still far off. In the halls of Winterfell everything looked the same. The fires still burned, the wolves still howled, and Maester Luwin still walked with scrolls tucked under his arm like they were gold. But inside Bran, something had shifted. He wasn't the boy who chased crows anymore. He was watching, always watching. He told Arya to say nothing, not yet. And to her credit, she didn't. She was only a year older than him, but she understood. Silence better than most adults did. She kept his secret, though he could see in her eyes she wanted to do something, anything. But Bran had a plan now. He started slipping away during lessons. Not to climb, not anymore. He went to the library. He sat quietly during council meetings when no one paid him much attention. He began noticing things, like how Maester Luwin's messages were often sealed with a golden lion's wax, or how Queen Cersei smiled too quickly when Lord Stark spoke of King's Landing. He noticed that Ser Jaime rarely let his gaze drift too far from the Queen's side. One morning, Bran took Arya to the crypts. "I think we need proof," he said, staring at the stone face of Lyanna Stark. Arya looked confused. "What kind of proof?" Bran glanced at her. "Enough to make father listen. He won't act on words. He's a lord. He believes in honor, not whispers." Arya nodded slowly, though she didn't really understand. "You're different now," she said after a long pause. Bran didn't respond. The chance came 3 days later. Jaime Lannister had arrived late from the training yard. His hair was wet. His armor wasn't on him. He was flustered. Bran followed him, not up a tower this time, but through the old servant tunnels beneath. The keep. He moved quietly. He had practice now, like a shadow under stone. And what he saw in that dim candlelight wasn't love. It was strategy. Cersei and Jaime again, speaking of plans. Speaking of Robert's madness, of Jon Arryn's death, of secrets they buried and men they had poisoned. Bran didn't watch. Long this time. He slipped away fast and silent. That night, he left a note under his father's door. No name, just words written in shaky, childish script. The Queen sleeps with her brother. They killed Jon Arryn. They will kill you. He didn't sleep that night. He sat near the window, watching the stars, waiting for screams, but none came. The next morning, he watched his father more closely than ever. Ned Stark looked tired, pale, but said nothing. He went about his duties, spoke with Robb about steel, asked Rickon to eat his vegetables. But that evening, Bran saw Maester Luwin burning a note in the hearth. His note. Bran's stomach turned cold. Maester Luwin. He must have read it first. Maybe he thought it was a prank. Maybe he thought protecting. The family meant hiding dangerous truths. Either way, Bran knew now. He couldn't trust the old man. So he went to the Godswood alone, hoping for something. An answer. A sign. He touched the weirwood with both hands, palms flat on its cold. Bark. Closed his eyes. The whisper came again. Faint but there, the fall never came. The path is broken. Bran didn't understand. He whispered back to the tree, not knowing if it heard. What do I do? But the Godswood gave no answer that day. Elsewhere in the castle, a raven took flight, black wings carrying whispers toward the south, and in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister felt a shiver she couldn't explain. Bran Stark was not broken, and that would make all the difference. It started with a letter, this time, not one written in childish handwriting or hidden under a door. Bran dictated it carefully to Arya, whispering each word as she etched them, in the clumsy script of a 10-year-old, trying to write like a lord. They didn't sign their names. Instead, they sealed the parchment with a pressed clump of wax and snow and gave it to a stable boy with instructions to deliver it quietly, without question, to Sir Rodrik Cassel. The letter named names. It spoke of Queen Cersei and her brother, of treason, of a child caught in shadows where he shouldn't be. It warned that Lord Stark was being watched, that poison had been poured into ears, and that Winterfell itself was no longer safe from southern rot. They signed it a witness in the tower. Bran watched from the top of the inner wall as Sir Rodrik read it that evening. He didn't show much on his face, just a tight twitch of the jaw and a long look toward the main keep. Then he walked straight to Ned Stark's solar. Bran's heart thudded. It had begun. The next morning, the Queen's smile was sharp, almost mocking. Her hand rested on her belly more often than usual. Bran noticed. So did Arya. The Lannisters were planning something, and time was running out. Later that day, a raven arrived from the Eyrie. It was a public reply, not coded or cloaked. Catelyn Stark had taken Tyrion Lannister into custody. The hall erupted in noise, some in outrage, some in confusion. But Bran heard the tension in the way the Lannisters breathed. Cersei's. Knuckles went white around her goblet. Jaime didn't speak that evening. That night, Lord Stark met with his sons. Bran wasn't invited. He waited outside the hall, hidden in the alcove where the shadows fell thickest. The door cracked open a hair. "If what I've been told is true," Ned's voice was low, grave, "then Jon Arryn died because he knew, and that means Robert is in danger. But what do we do, father?" That was Robb, always the dutiful one. "We wait," Ned said. For Catelyn's return, for more certainty. We don't strike at snakes unless we know where the head lies. Bran clenched his fists, always waiting, always slow. That was why people died. That was why Jon Arryn was already buried, and King Robert still slept beside a viper every night. So Bran decided. He went to the rookery alone, beneath the moon's pale light, with a second letter he and Arya had written. This one was not for Winterfell. It was for Stannis Baratheon. Bran didn't know if he would believe a child, but he did know Stannis hated lies. And if Jon Arryn had been digging for truth about Cersei's children, then Stannis might already suspect. He sent the Raven. 2 days later, things began to unravel. Ser Jaime caught him watching, just once. A flicker in the courtyard where Bran's eyes lingered too long on him as he trained. Jaime paused mid-swing, met Bran's gaze, and held it for a heartbeat too long. That night, someone tried to kill him. A fire was set in the library, small, but enough. Enough to lure Bran from his room with the promise of lost scrolls and rare maps. He went in alone as the door slowly shut behind him and the smoke thickened. But Arya was already following. She burst in with a cloak pulled around her mouth, found Bran coughing by the wall, and dragged him out by the arm. They didn't tell anyone. Not yet. If they did, the killer would know they'd failed. Bran needed time, needed to know who it was. He couldn't accuse the Queen, not yet. But someone had tried to silence him, that was clear. He sat in silence by the fire later that night, watching the flames dance. Not broken, not afraid, just angry. The kind of anger that waits, plans, watches. Far beyond the wall, the three-eyed raven opened both eyes fully now, and whispered to the roots of the world, the boy has chosen the darker path. The quiet in Winterfell was uneasy now, the kind of quiet that makes wolves pace and ravens fidget in their cages, the kind of quiet before something tears. Bran didn't climb anymore. He stalked. He learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to move through his family's home like a shadow they barely noticed. He listened behind doors, hid behind barrels in the courtyard, and sat behind shelves in the library, the same place someone had tried to smoke him out of days earlier. He found out that the torch used to start that fire had been taken from the blacksmith's storeroom, and only a few trusted hands had keys to it. One of them was a Lannister man-at-arms named Velen, the same man who'd laughed too loudly at Arya's wild stories and never bowed low enough to Lord Stark. Bran didn't confront him. He told Arya, and Arya, unlike Robb or their father, didn't wait. The next evening, she planted her feet in the training yard with a wooden sword and demanded Velen spar her. He laughed, played along for a few moments, then shoved her down roughly when she aimed too high. The next morning, Velen was gone. No one said why. Bran saw Ser Rodrik whispering to Maester Luwin, and that night the blacksmith's door was sealed. But it wasn't enough. That same week, Ned Stark received a reply from King's Landing, a royal summons, not from the king, but from the Queen's hand. Cersei wanted Ned to travel south immediately. Bring Bran, the letter said, the king misses the boy. A trap, a deep gold-wrapped trap. Bran told his father everything. Not in bits this time, not in pieces. He looked him in the eyes and said, I saw them, in the tower, the Queen and Ser Jaime. They were together, not like family. He told him about the fire, about the letter he'd sent, even about the whispers he'd heard that made no sense, like how Lord Baelish had visited the north once before Jon Arryn died, though no one knew why, and Lord Stark listened, really listened. For the first time, Bran saw something like fear in his father's eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Ned asked, his voice low and quiet, like it had been stolen by the snow. You wouldn't have believed me, Bran said, not cruelly, just true. That night a raven was sent to the Eyrie, and Winterfell's gates were closed to all Lannister men. The next day, Jaime Lannister demanded a word with Ned in private. It was granted, 2 swordsmen posted at the door. No one knows what was said. But that evening, Jaime rode out with 20 of his knights. They left nothing behind, except one body Veland found near the riverbank with a broken neck and eyes wide in terror. A warning. Bran stood over the body. No one stopped him. The guards parted for him now. They looked at him differently. He wasn't just Lord Stark's son anymore. He was the boy who watched. Winter was still far, but a new kind of cold was already creeping through the halls of the castle. Arya began to train more. Robb stopped laughing as easily. Jon, still at the wall, wrote back shorter letters, harsher ones, and Bran started dreaming. Not normal dreams, dreams of the weirwood trees whispering names, of wolves howling in circles around a broken crown, of a throne of swords dripping, of blood. In one dream he saw Cersei burning, not from dragonfire, but something colder, something older. He woke with frost on his fingers. That morning he asked old Nan if she remembered any stories about the children of the forest. She only nodded, then muttered something he couldn't understand, something in a language that felt like roots curling through soil. Bran didn't ask again, but he started to write, a journal hidden under his bed. Each entry ended with the same words, "I did not fall, and I will not forget." The sky over Winterfell was dark, not with storm clouds, but with the kind of tension that hums in stone, in the bones of the keep itself. Maester Luwin claimed it was nerves, unrest from the southern summons. But Bran knew better. The castle was holding its breath. Lord Stark had changed. He smiled less, spoke in shorter bursts, and lingered in the Godswood longer than usual. He had sent another raven, this one directly to King Robert. Bran wasn't told what it said, but he guessed it carried a confession, or maybe a warning. Whatever it was, it came too late. The raven that returned did not bear the king's words. It bore the seal of Queen Cersei. Its message was brief. Winterfell will burn if you defy the crown. Ned called for every bannerman in the north to prepare. He ordered the training of new soldiers, doubled the guard at the gates, and sent Robb to oversee the western watchtower. Bran watched from the ramparts. He wasn't afraid, but he was tired of being the boy who knew too much and could do too little. He stopped writing in the journal. He didn't need it anymore. He remembered everything now, even in dreams. In one of those dreams, he stood in a chamber of ice and blood. At the center sat a throne that pulsed like a heart, and on it, not a king, but himself. His face was older, pale, cold. Around him knelt the lords of Westeros, bleeding from their eyes. When he woke, his hands were shaking. He didn't tell Arya. She was changing too. She had taken to disappearing for hours, sneaking into the kennels, watching the guards train, even mimicking their movements. She wasn't the little sister who played with needles anymore. She was becoming sharper than the sword she named after one. Bran saw it in her eyes, the same hunger he felt. Then the messenger came. Not a raven, but a man, dust-covered, half-starved, and bearing the colors of House Baratheon. He brought word that Renly Baratheon had fled King's Landing, that Stannis was raising banners, that Robert was sick or poisoned. Bran listened in silence. Then he went to the crypts again. He stood beneath the statue of his uncle Brandon, the man he was named for, and whispered, "The lions are moving." The wind answered with a soft howl through the stone halls. That night, Bran had another dream. He stood in the courtyard of Winterfell, but it wasn't Winterfell. The sky was red, the snow black. The ground was littered with swords and bones. And in the center, a single tree stood, its face carved deeper, its mouth twisted open in a silent scream. From the tree a voice whispered, "The past has changed, the threads have twisted, the boy who did not fall now carries too much." When he woke, he found something had changed in him. He could feel things, the emotions of people walking past, the lies behind their smiles. He sat in silence at breakfast, while Sir Roderick claimed he knew nothing about the missing scout. Bran could taste the fear in his voice. Later, in the yard, he watched a new rider approach the gates. His cloak was Lannister red, though his face was hidden. Bran knew who he was before he even spoke. Sir Gregor Clegane, sent north, not for war, for a message. He handed a scroll to Maester Luwin with fingers thick as butchered meat, said nothing, didn't wait for a reply, just turned and rode back. The way he came. The scroll was read in private. Bran wasn't told what it said, but the next morning Robb left with 1,000 men. Ned remained behind with the younger children, and Bran started hearing crows, not just in his dreams, outside his window, near the godswood, in the rafters of the great hall. They whispered his name in voices no one else seemed to hear. He followed one into the crypts. This time, it didn't stop at Lyanna. It flew deeper, past the empty tombs, to the place where the stone was still fresh. And there, Bran heard a voice. Not the gods, not the crows, his own voice, from a place he'd never been. "I see you, and I remember." The snows came early that year, not a heavy blizzard, but the soft, creeping kind, the kind that settles over rooftops and never fully melts. Winter hadn't arrived, but it was close enough to feel its teeth in the wind. Bran stood at the top of the first keep, wrapped in furs that no longer felt warm. He watched the last of Robb's men disappear beyond the trees, their banners flapping. Weakly, their breath fogging like ghosts in the cold. It felt wrong. Robb was too young to lead an army, but they had no choice. Not when Lannisters were marching from the south and the wolves of the north were being hunted one by one. Arya stood beside him. She didn't speak much anymore. Her face had grown still, not calm, not soft, just unreadable. "They'll try to kill him," she said at last, her voice almost a whisper. "The same way they tried to kill you." Bran nodded. "They might, but Robb's smarter than they think." "They think we're all children," Arya said, "but children see everything." Bran looked at her then, really looked. The fire in her was no longer wild. It was controlled now, burning slow but deep. She would survive anything, maybe even war. That night Bran dreamed again. This time he stood at the wall, not on top of it, in it, trapped in the ice. Faces screamed around him, old and dead. Some were kings, some were things with no names. And the wind wasn't just cold, it spoke. "You were not meant to walk this path. You broke the wheel before it turned." He woke with blood on his pillow, not from his nose, from his ears. He told no one. Instead, he returned to the godswood, barefoot in the snow, and sat beneath the weirwood until his fingers went numb. "Tell me what I am," he whispered. This time the tree whispered back, "Not a prince, not a raven, not a boy, you are the wound." That night, Maester Luwin found Bran unconscious near the tree, skin pale, eyes rolled back. He carried him back. Inside, muttering prayers to the old gods and the new, but Bran woke before dawn. He said nothing of the voice. He didn't tell Arya either, but something had changed. He could feel people differently now. Their thoughts weren't clear, not like reading words, but they pressed against him, like water pressing against glass. When Sir Roderick spoke with the guards, Bran could feel the doubt in his heart. When Maester Luwin lied about a letter from King's Landing, Bran felt the heat of shame rise like a fever. And when Queen Cersei sent a second raven, Bran read it before anyone else even touched the scroll. He didn't know how. His hands just ached to hold it, and the moment he did, the words appeared to him. "We know what your son saw. The crown demands his silence. You have one moon's turn to respond, or you'll receive a package, not a message, a hand, maybe a head. The scroll burned in the fire before dawn. Bran didn't sleep after that. He began walking the halls at night, barefoot in silence, learning every turn of Winterfell's bowels. He studied the guards' routines, learned where the wine was stored, where the poisons were kept, and which servant girl had been sneaking into Sir Jorah's bed at night. He started to feel less like a child and more like the castle itself, like he was inside it, and it inside him. Arya noticed. "You don't blink as much anymore," she said one morning. "You stare too long." Bran forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Later that day, a scout returned from the south. He was half dead. His horse collapsed on the spot. The man lived long enough to whisper, "Robb, trapped, whispering wood, traitor among them." Lord Stark fell into silence. Bran did not. He went to the tower that night, the one where he was supposed to fall. He climbed it again, not with fear, with purpose. At the top he looked out over Winterfell, and then he saw something that didn't belong. A flicker in the forest, a shadow with gold on its shoulders. The Lannisters were coming, not with armies, with assassins, and Bran Stark would be ready. The sun never quite rose that morning, just a dull grey light that smeared across the snow-covered trees and cast long, crooked shadows on Winterfell's walls, the kind of light that warns of death long before it arrives. Bran didn't sleep the night before. He sat in the old tower, watching, waiting, and when the shadow finally moved, he knew exactly where it would go. They came quietly, 2 of them, dressed in black, but marked by their movement. Too clean, for wildlings, too skilled for common thieves. One moved like a soldier, the other smaller like a cat. Bran had seen them in a dream. He climbed down before they reached the gate, fast and silent, his bare hands numb on the stone. He slipped through the servants' tunnels and was already in the hall when the knock came. Sir Rodrik opened the gates. The men bowed, claimed they were messengers from Lord Tywin, carrying urgent terms of peace. One offered a scroll. The other carried a satchel. Maester Luwin was called. Bran stood behind a pillar, out of sight, but not out of reach. He focused, pushed. He didn't know exactly what he was doing. He just reached out with that strange new sense, the one that let him taste lies, feel danger in the bones of others. And he felt it now. Deep in the satchel, something sharp, metal wrapped in cloth, a crossbow. He opened his eyes, ran. By the time he reached the room again, Arya was already there, standing near the high table, watching the newcomers with her arms crossed. She saw the way Bran burst in, breathless, pale, eyes wide. That was enough. Arya moved like a knife, swift, low, and sudden. She kicked the satchel out of the man's hand just as he reached into it. The cloth spilled open. The crossbow clattered across the floor. Chaos erupted. Sir Rodrik grabbed one man by the throat. The other ran, or tried to. Bran flung a chair in his path, stumbled forward, and shouted, "They were sent to kill! Father!" The words stopped the room cold. The assassin, still breathing, was dragged to the dungeon. The one who tried to run was dead within minutes, throat crushed under Rodrik's elbow. Lord Stark came rushing into the hall, blade half drawn. But by then it was over. Bran looked him in the eyes. "They were going to kill you. They were going to make it look like someone else did it." Ned didn't argue. He didn't try to calm his son. He just stood there, stunned. "Who told you this?" he asked finally. Bran didn't answer, because it wasn't a who anymore. It was everything. The trees, the dreams, the voices in the wind, the pull in his chest when danger came near. He didn't understand it, not fully, but it had saved them. That night, Arya slept with a blade under her pillow. Maester Luwin began writing letters again, this time to bannermen closer to home, the kind that could ride fast and draw swords quicker than they wrote replies. And Bran. Bran stood in the crypts again, alone. He sat beside the statue of his uncle and listened. There was no crow this time, but there was a voice. You have turned the page too soon. The story is breaking. Bran didn't care. Let it break. He was done being the child who waited for others to protect him. The next morning, he began drawing maps of Winterfell. Not the kind you find in books. His maps marked secret doors, loose stones, cracks in the walls, escape paths, kill zones, and he began training. Not with swords, with silence, with listening, with knowing. Arya helped. She showed him how to move low, how to disappear into a room without a sound. Together they became shadows. And just in time, because 3 days later another raven came. This one bore the mark of House Bolton, and the message was simple. We march for Winterfell, not as friends. Bran didn't blink. Let them come, he said. Let them all come. The first snow of true winter fell the day the Boltons arrived. Not the pale, floating kind that dusted roofs and faded by noon. This snow stuck, thick, wet, heavy. It weighed down trees and clung to armor, and when it landed on flesh, it didn't melt. It burned. From the battlements of Winterfell, Bran watched them come. 200 riders, pink-flayed man banners snapping in the wind. At their front rode Lord Roose Bolton, as calm and expressionless as if he were attending a feast. To his right, a bastard boy with dark eyes and a sick grin, Ramsay. Bran had heard the name in his dreams. Ramsay Snow, the dog that bites the hand. They're here for blood, Arya said beside him, gripping her belt where Needle was hidden. No, Bran replied, eyes locked on Ramsay. They're here for chaos. Lord Stark greeted them at the gate with honor, as duty demanded. Warm words, stiff smiles, talk of shelter before the snow thickened. Roose spoke with slow, cold courtesy. But Bran knew better. He felt it under the surface, like rot beneath a fresh apple. The Boltons entered as guests. They would not leave. The same. That night a feast was held. Meat, wine, laughter, the usual lies. Bran sat near the end of the hall, eyes on Ramsay. The bastard barely touched his food. He watched the room like a wolf in a sheepfold. Every time a servant passed behind him, his hand twitched near the dagger on his hip. Maester Luwin tried to speak with Bran about dreams, about madness, about how children needed rest in these troubling times. Bran only nodded, then left, down into the cold underbelly of Winterfell, the crypts. That night, the tree whispered again. They are inside the walls. Fire will cleanse them. But you must open the gate from within. He saw it clearly then. The Boltons hadn't come just to take the north. They'd come to burn the name of Stark from history, quietly, in whispers and accidents. Poisons, knives in the dark. Turn the north against itself. Let Winterfell fall not to war, but to decay. Bran would not let that happen, he told Arya. She didn't even blink. When? Tonight! They made their plan. As the firelight dimmed and most guests stumbled to their chambers drunk, Arya slipped away through the servants' halls. Bran waited by the gatehouse, hidden in the rafters. He had left signs for those loyal to House Stark, a torn piece of grey fabric knotted at the southern post. They knew what it meant. Prepare. Ramsay moved first. Bran saw him creeping toward the east wing with 2 of his hounds and a blade dipped in something black and oily. He never reached the tower. Arya was faster. A scream echoed through the courtyard. Not a child's, but a man's. Ramsay's. When guards came running, Arya was already gone. The chaos began. The castle erupted in shouts. Torches flared. Steel rang out on stone. Roose Bolton demanded answers. Bran gave none. Instead, he climbed, one last time, back to the tower. The same one from that day long ago, but not to fall, to signal. He lit the pyre. A beacon made of oil-soaked cloth and dry wood piled high. It caught in seconds, a fire on the tallest spire of Winterfell, and from the woods the wolves answered. Not dire wolves, northern men, loyal bannermen who had seen the sign, who had watched. The Boltons ride past with clenched jaws. Now they came not for rob, not for war, but for vengeance. The gates opened. Winterfell did not fall. Roose Bolton did, quietly, a dagger under his ribs, delivered by a boy with calm eyes and a blank face. Ramsay's body was never found. Some say Arya let the hounds finish him. Others say he screamed for hours beneath the great hall. By dawn, the snow was red. Bran stood in the godswood, staring into the face of the weirwood. "I did not fall," he whispered, "but I still broke." And the tree whispered back, "And what breaks becomes something else."